Now, Sean Spicer is the press secretary for the Trump administration, giving us such wonderful blunders as alternative facts, which I know was said by Kellyanne Conway, but still. And then, of course, the fact that he was hiding among the bushes. He wasn't in the bushes. He was hiding among the bushes to avoid those White House reporters during the whole Comey flap. Now, that is, of course, super, super embarrassing for Sean Spicer. But to be fair, I'm going to kind of defend him a little bit. Sean Spicer and his other surrogates, they're essentially being asked to do the impossible. Defend Donald Trump. Often without warning and without talking points ahead of time, without doing strategy ahead of time. So, again, let's be fair. Sean Spicer is tasked with the impossible. And so you can understand why he and the other surrogates are continuously failing. And look, it comes down to bad management. And I'm about to show you. Now, for that, I go to the New York Times, who, talked to some certain people, several Republicans, people who are in the administration as well, unnamed members, of course, who spoke on the condition of anonymity. They talked to those people, and I have some of their responses here. And basically, the whole point is Donald Trump's leadership style is just non-existent. He is not a leader. He's actually doing terrible. Now, one of the people that the New York Times spoke to was Alex Conant. Now, Conant is a Republican strategist and former advisor to Marco Rubio. Little Marco. Now, he said, Trump is putting a lot in the backs of his spokespeople while simultaneously cutting their legs out from underneath them. There's nothing more discouraging or embarrassing for a spokesman than to have your boss contradict you. In political communications, you're only as good as your credibility. And as far as credibility goes, Sean Spicer and Kellyanne Conway, they have none. Neither does Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who is also out there, no relation to Bernie Sanders, of course, out there basically covering for Sean Spicer when he was hiding among the bushes. Again, I will not let that go. It's hilarious. Now, they're out there essentially defending the indefensible. You can't defend this guy who comes out and immediately contradicts you on everything. And I'll have an example about that. But first, I'm going to get a quote from David Axelrod, who was a Democratic strategist. And, of course, he was a communications and messaging advisor to President Obama. So he knows a little bit about messaging. Quote, the most hazardous duty in Washington these days is that of a Trump surrogate because the president constantly undercuts the statements of his own people. You wind up looking like a liar or a fool, neither of which is particularly attractive. And yet Kellyanne Conway has seemed to have made a profession out of this, out of looking foolish. So she's doing a pretty good job of that. Now, a good example of that, of course, is the whole Comey thing, right? Where they first, of course, claimed to be defending Hillary's honor. Now, I think nobody bought that. I don't even think they bought that. They're like, are you serious? Is that what we're going to tell people? Rod Rosenstein saying, oh, we were so upset about how he handled the whole Hillary email thing. Boy, that was so inappropriate. That was bad. I mean, how dare they go after crooked Hillary like that? I mean, Hillary Clinton. I mean, so inappropriate. Nobody bought that. It was ridiculous. Again, going back to either looking like a liar or a fool. Well, in that circumstance, you look like both. It was a disaster. Now, you also had Rosenstein, who wrote that recommendation, by the way, when he got thrown under the bus a little bit later. And then the excuse for firing Comey went to, oh, but he was a showboat. Comey was a showboat. He's getting all the attention. But then he was also doing a terrible job. And basically all these different explanations happened within the space of a couple of days. And his surrogates were expected in that time to essentially defend him. And they did by coming up with all of these different excuses. And then, of course, during the Lester Holt interview, you had Donald Trump coming out and saying, no, all that stuff is wrong. I just undercut everybody. In fact, let's take a look at that specific part of that Lester Holt interview.
Monday, you met with the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein.
Right.
Did you ask for a recommendation?
What I did is I was going to fire Comey. My decision. It was not.
You had made the decision before they came in the room.
I was going to fire Comey. There's no good time to do it, by the way.
Because in your letter you said I accepted their recommendation,
yeah, well,
so you had already made the decision.
I was going to fire regardless of recommendation.
So there was really
he made a recommendation. He's highly respected, very good guy, very smart guy. The Democrats like him, the Republicans like him. He made a recommendation, but regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey.
Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey. But then you just undercut all your excuses that you sent your surrogates out to say. Disaster. Or as Haberman and Thrush, who wrote this article for the New York Times, put it, Mr. Trump himself vaporized every version of the Comey story his defenders, including Mr. Pence, that is the Vice President Mike Pence, had labored so earnestly to put forward. But that's what they do. Oh, hey, here's our narrative. Let's stick to the script, and oh crap, Donald Trump just messed it up for us. He blew it. You know why? It's because Donald Trump's a child. He has no idea what he's doing. And he's not, he's not fit to craft communication strategy, much less be the leader of the free world, and yet here we are. We're stuck with him. And this, of course, has his staff, this lack of coherent messaging, has his staff incredibly pissed off. In fact, they note that few of Mr. Trump's eruptions have had such a destructive effect on his administration or left such deep resentments among his scarred staff. According to Trump aides and surrogates, and the blowback from the Comey decision and the way it was handled have accelerated the discussions about possible changes in the White House. The problem is, it is not clear what type of changes Mr. Trump is prepared to make or who he can draw as a replacement. Now, of course, in pure Trumpian fashion, here he comes, no plan, no ideas what he's doing, and no idea who he's going to replace or who they're going to replace it with. I've heard the possibility of Sean Spicer being replaced by a Fox News host, Kimberly Guilfoyle. Oh, disaster. Look, that's not the way to run the White House, and it certainly isn't the way to run anything. It's just plain old bad leadership. But of course, the bad leader in this case is Donald Trump. And he's never going to admit that the dysfunction starts with him. It starts at the top. The shit rolls downhill. Despite, of course, this fact being painfully obvious to everyone. Look, it is so obvious that even Newt fucking Gingrich gets it. He said, the president, quote, resembles a quarterback who doesn't call a huddle and gets ahead of his defensive line so nobody can block him and defend him because nobody knows what the play is. Yeah, okay, put it into a sports analogy, and that does make sense. You know, he's got the ball, hot, what are you guys doing? Yeah, you're supposed to go out there and do that. You didn't tell us to. We don't know what we're doing. God, the guy's a moron. Now, you have, Gingrich continues. At some point, I hope he's going to learn that taking one extra day, having the entire team lined up, I don't think he always helps himself. I think 10% less Trump would be 100% more effective. Or, you know, 100% less Trump would also be 100% more effective. But hey, that's my opinion. Look, I've said before, this guy is a child with zero self-control. He cannot take responsibility for his own failures. And for that, I go back to the New York Times. Raging over what he viewed as Mr. Comey's witch hunt against him. That's his words. And blaming the bipartisan condemnation of his action on the failures of his embattled and overworked communication team. Hey, it's all your guys' fault. I didn't give you talking points. I made the decision without really telling anybody. And then I expected you to defend me. And when you sucked at it, well, I'm going to blame you. Oh, because you should have known better. Child, again. Now, who is he getting mad at? Well, Mr. Trump is growing increasingly dissatisfied with his performance of his chief of staff, Reince Priebus, the communications director, Michael Dubke, and Sean Spicer, a previous ally, according to a half-dozen West Wing officials who said the president was considering the most far-reaching shakeup of his already tumultuous term. And that, of course, leads to the possibility of Sean Spicer possibly losing his job. In fact, the Post notes that he has been especially critical of Mr. Spicer. They said, openly musing about replacing him and telling people in his circle that he kept his own press secretary out of the loop in dismissing Mr. Comey until the last possible moment because he feared that the communications staff would leak the news. People close to both men said that Spicer has not developed an especially close relationship with the president and has failed to use the self-protective tools that savvier Trump aides have adopted. So, look, in the Trump White House, it's you adapt or die. Sean Spicer looks like he might be the next casualty. And we've already seen, look, 115 days. And we've seen how many people get fired or leave the White House? Enough. Too many. Now, the Post notes that those who have managed to stay in Mr. Trump's orbit over a period of time have developed some unique adaptation skills. Because again, this is not a normal presidency. Now, what kind of adaptation skills? Campaign aides learn not to lean too much on his account events, the president, steering away from unequivocal public pronouncements until they could point to his words. And sometimes even that backfires on them because he'll come back and contradict himself. So basically, their adaptation skills are basically come out and don't believe anything the president says. Don't trust what he says. Don't take him seriously. Don't take the president of the United States seriously when he says something. That's essentially their advice to each other. And that's what they do. They go out in press conferences. Well, you know, I wouldn't listen to the president. I mean, yes, he said this sort of, but don't listen to what he says. Listen to what we're saying. Ridiculous. And look, again, he comes out and he says one thing, and then he flips his position, says something completely different, and you end up looking like an ass. That's what's going on. But look, that's kind of the interesting thing about this, right? Associates say that a tacit agreement exists between Trump and the people who work for him. In exchange for the wealth, fame, and power he conveys to them, they agree to absorb the incoming fire directed at him. So when he does say something ridiculous, and then he counteracts what he had said previously, flips his position, and then he gets fired for it, well, these surrogates basically have to step in and say, well, actually, that's my fault, not his fault. We got it wrong. So they take all the fire at him. So, again, in this case, and how you look at it really matters, because the way that I see this is that there are less employees and more human shields to be used up. Now, to me, this says a lot about Donald Trump as a person, as a human being. Oh, these guys who work for me, they're human shields. So when I mess up, when I make a mistake, even though I will never admit making a mistake, they're there to draw fire. And then when they've drawn too much, or they've lost all their credibility, well, I'm just going to get rid of them because they're not making me happy anymore. Again, that says a lot about the way Donald Trump runs business and also runs his White House and how he thinks about people, the people who work for him. So now I realize that doing that might have actually served him well in business, right? And even in campaigning. But he's the president, for fuck's sake. He is now running the White House like one of his businesses. And you know what happened to a lot of his businesses. 5 bankruptcies. Not good. Turns out running a government like a business is kind of a bad thing overall. Especially since public service is completely different than running a for-profit corporation. Just saying. Who knew? Who knew it would be this difficult? Nobody knew it was going to be that complicated. Except that everybody did. Look, I think people have to start changing their perception of what government's supposed to be and how it's supposed to work. Now, some of the Republicans have this crazy idea that government should run like a business and that CEOs would do really good as a president. Well, we have a CEO as a president treating the government like it's a business. And it's been a complete unmitigated disaster. Even within his own circle, in his own party. Now, the way it's supposed to be politicians were there to be doing the people's work. Now, I realize that we had a problem with that long before Donald Trump. But now you have lawyers, and CEOs, and career politicians running government like it's their own personal piggy bank. And Donald Trump exemplifies the worst of that. Again, we've had this before, but now it's been pushed to its extreme. And the solution is we need to stop voting for these people. For one, we have to realize that government is not a business, is not like a business. And it shouldn't be run like a business. That's number one. Changing our idea of what a representative should be. Trump is an extreme example of what's wrong with the system, but he's also a symptom of the system. I really believe that Mitt Romney, for example, he would have ran the government in the same kind of terrible way. He just would have done it more efficiently, and would have gotten more terrible policy through that would only help the richest Americans. And Donald Trump, we're just lucky that he is so bellicose, so loud, and so inept that we actually can't see that. That we actually can't see the terrible thing, or that he's really, really bad at getting those terrible things through. And that we're seeing all this dysfunction going on here. Trump is basically nothing more than an inept businessman masquerading as a leader. But through his clownish behavior is unintentionally pointing out some of the problems in our system and problems with the perception of what a leader should be. Now, if we do not take this unique opportunity to fix our system, then the damage that he's going to do will end up being for nothing. This White House is falling apart. And it is up to us, it is up to the people, to learn the lesson that this will certainly teach us. And elect real leaders who will end up representing us. Not the lobbyists, not the corporations, but actual people. And so hopefully we can take this rare opportunity to actually see the problems with the system and actually fix the problems with the system. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.